Hello and welcome back to the Morning Skate Podcast. I am your host, DJ Mitchell, here with Matt Moody, who is already ready to leave the stream and never do another show with me again. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm just surprised you're pretending to be in a good mood, considering as 70 seconds ago you were complaining about the fact that Nathan McKinnon hadn't scored yet. So I'm happy to see
He's
you've turned
still
over a new leaf, however.
I'm not mad that he hasn't scored. I'm mad that it's Makar twice. But I bet Makar for shots, and Makar's like, I'll do you one better, sir. I will only score those, actually. Regardless, who cares? It's just money, and money can't buy you friendship. And I know that because I have done. So, how was your weekend?
It was fine. Football remains undefeated in being stupid. But fortunately, my Sunday wasn't horrendous because I onslaughted Washington on Sunday night Slate, and I think it was a 4-gamer, maybe. No, it was only 3 games, but somehow nobody played OV pretty much.
Yeah.
So I finished like 6th in the $40. I had OV and basically a bunch of garbage. I had Washington 2 that combined for 3, and I had like 3 DraftKings points, and I still finished 6th in a whatever how big the contest is, multiple hundred people, I'm pretty sure. So I can't complain. It was a decent enough weekend, and looking forward to the Tuesday slate here.
Yeah, I had the classic NFL where I thought I was better than dead, and instead of swapping, I just left it because I was like, who fucking cares? And I almost min cashed, and it was one of those where you're like, wait, can I be mad about this? Like, I didn't even attempt to save this garbage, and it almost got saved. So it was what it was. Elvin Kamara, what are you gonna do? But didn't watch it. I did watch a little bit of the Bills game. I'll be honest. I turned it on to check in at the end. We made some dinner and I turned it on, and boring. Turned on the hockey, much better. Ovi, the GOAT. We're on to the 7-game slate. This is I mean, like Monday night, if you're listening live over on YouTube, and if you're not, go check us out on YouTube. YouTube channel is like at their www.youtube.com/NHL DJ or DJ NHL or NHL DJ.
You need an
us a
at in
subscribe.
there, I think, but yeah, like it's in the description.
So Doesn't matter.
Just click the
You'll
link in the
it.
description. You'll be there.
Monday felt like one of those slates where it really felt like there was too many good chalk spots. And this slate feels like there's maybe not as many, but there's still like a lot of fun, like opportunities to get in on some different, like weird. There's a lot of oddities. There's a lot of oddities to this slate, I will say. And I'm excited to cover them all. Is there anything off the hopper? Anything you want to mention in the housekeeping, or are we good to just kind of jump right into the 7-game?
A few teams on a back-to-back, Anaheim and Edmonton, playing back-to-backs on Tuesday. So we'll go with what we know for both those squads, but definitely be sure to check in on those teams in pregame skates and whatnot. Edmonton in particular, running 11-7 right now. Not expecting that to change, but if Arvidsson, returns or something happens tonight, they could have to change that, which obviously changes what we're going to say. Otherwise, Minnesota loading up their top line. That's one of the later games on the slate. Actually, I guess it's not. There's only 2 7:00 starts. But yeah, that's noteworthy. And yeah, that's, I think, it. Really nothing too critical off the top that we need to cover.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get right into it. Hopefully everyone's having a good Monday slate. We get over to Tuesday, where we start with Edmonton, as you mentioned, on a back-to-back, a road back-to-back, going from Montreal to Ottawa. They're a -142 favorite in a 6.5. Not quite our highest total of the night, because technically there's a game that is -110, and this is a -105 on the over. So just a very light smidge, and we're gonna get to that one next. But I mean, again, I'm just going to go into this slate with the same mentality, and with Edmonton on a back-to-back, this game with I think Ottawa is actually getting much better defensively. So while Edmonton is kind of matchup proof, I may just not go the McDavid Draisaitl route, even if it's 11-7. I might just say that, like, I'm not going to go that way myself. But what are your thoughts on the Oilers?
Yeah, some quick, I guess, 10-game trends thoughts. The Oilers are one of the better offenses over the past 10 games on the slate. Just it's made to look far worse by Ottawa being maybe the best defense in the last 10, maybe this
Mhm.
side of Carolina. They've been stifling their opposition, not allowing either chances or quantity. And even though they've gotten pretty poor goaltending in general, they're still not allowing a ton, again, relative to like league average at this point over their last 10. So yeah, Edmonton sure looks like they're in a decent spot. There's really no spots in the slate that stand out. If you use the rainbow charts that I posted in the Discord to sort of guide your play, you're gonna be looking at Chicago, which is a complete mess at 5-on-5 and on the power play. We just simply don't know
Oh,
what they're gonna
yeah.
do. Without Seth Jones,
Lose.
of course, and Pittsburgh, who, I don't think anyone wants to touch them with a 10-foot pole, yet they've been, relatively productive. They've been producing, quantity, just not really finishing because they're bad. And guess what? Tampa's pretty good. So I certainly wouldn't blame you for going to the two positive spots and saying, actually, no, thank you, which is, kind of interesting. When you look at
Yeah.
actual goals, you can look at Tampa for sure. Minnesota stands out, and the Rangers that feels a bit more realistic. But not included there is Edmonton because of what we just said. Ottawa's been really, really good. Edmonton's on a back-to-back, so I'm going to gauge ownership here. If it looks like Edmonton's going to be 15+% owned, I'm not that interested. But if we're going to get 7% owned Leon Draisaitl, sure, I could be talked into it because again, this slate is just not overly appealing from any standpoint, really, as far as like who to play.
Yeah, I could see that honestly. I think Draisaitl's really a decent pivot. I think he's very one-offable. Like you don't have to follow the crowd that says like I'm playing him with McDavid and other power play one pieces. Like it's likely McDavid gets there. In many circumstances with Draisaitl getting there, but it's not all of them. And if he even just gets one goal where he's sort of without McDavid getting an assist, McDavid could easily fail. So I do like that pivot away. One question that kind of came to my head that I never really even thought to ask is like, when you look at a matchup like this, where again, we're maybe like I could be wrong, right? Like, could I be wrong by saying that Edmonton and Ottawa are better defensively than maybe I think, or is it that their goaltending's been bad enough that it's allowing some of their games to get out of hand, and then their defense not to have to carry much of the brunt? I don't know if that's really the case because both teams have been like competitive enough, but like when they're losing, are the score effects kind of counting more positively in the favor of their defense? I mean, it might be too nuanced to even worry about on a one game sample size, but like one thing I never really considered is like I look at this stuff and I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe this team is actually bad, but we're not noticing it because when they're bad, it's all goaltender driven, and then the game is out of hand, and now the other team isn't really pushing pace or kind of sitting on it. I think with Edmonton, it's probably less of that case. I'm sorry to rant so much. I think with Edmonton, the reason they've looked so good defensively is that when they've gone 11-7, and it's going to probably continue, McDavid is seeing 25 minutes, and teams are just doing everything in their power to control McDavid, Draisaitl, and I guess Hyman's out there. Might as well say his name, even though he's not doing anything. That they're not even as focused on producing offense the other way, where it's like they'll take that that trade off of like we're not going to get as much offense for 25 minutes if McDavid plays 25 minutes like he did against Toronto, albeit in overtime. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting sort of conundrum to do of like, what is the way to play an Edmonton game successfully? Because it's just like a different vacuum every single slate where like, how do they win? What does that look like? I think I'm going to fade them here though.
Um, yeah, I feel like you started that as a question and ended it with potentially an answer to a question. Maybe it wasn't the question you were going to ask, but generally speaking, I've long held the belief that the field just is doing things lazily, which whatever, optimizers are optimizers, and that's fine and good. And so yeah, line one, okay, cool, looks great. Stack them up. Find a cheap line. Oh, does a defenseman fit? No, okay, just pick two random ones. Whatever, that's fine. We see all the time, like to all the bitching and moaning I do about Sisima, he really doesn't do that. He finds the best plays, and to his credit, he usually builds around them intelligently. Sometimes he'll play guys against his goalie and do things that don't really make sense. But like there are many paths to success, even if you're not just trying to follow me, who my success has been, come and go in the past couple of years, where, before that I was far more successful. And I'm far more interested in like actually parsing through like, okay, if they're 11-7, that means McDavid as a one-off is far better than if they're 12-6, and trying to think through things in that way. Um, I think how you play the Oilers in either situation doesn't really matter, especially from an Ottawa team. We almost are certain what they're going to do. So before we get over to Ottawa, I'll just mention that with 11-7, we should expect Draisaitl to play a bunch with McDavid. That's usually at the expense of RNH. But also McDavid Draisaitl stack is perfectly in order. You could tack on Evan Bouchard. I'm not really interested in chasing like Jeff Skinner or even Adam Henrique down the pricing charts. If you want to play Podkolzin alongside Draisaitl, they've actually looked pretty good together. I wouldn't hate the idea, but you're certainly not saying, "Oh, I'm playing Podkolzin because if Draisaitl gets there, he's carrying Podkolzin with him." Like that's just not what's going to happen, given the setup that we currently expect. Otherwise, defensively, with the injury to Darnell Nurse, I don't think there's anything to pop out value wise. They're going with 7 of them, of course, and that just takes away from all the cheap guys who aren't very good. So, getting over to Ottawa, there are a number of interesting guys. So, I guess to sort of answer what I was getting to, I don't think Ottawa's like in any particular hurry to try to shut down McDavid. Oh, we have a Michael Backlund to just throw at him and just play the game to a halt. It does feel like this is the sort of matchup where, it's going to be star on star, and it's either Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stützle out against them at all times, and probably Thomas Chabot at all times. So I'm a little bit interested in, building around the top 2 lines plus Thomas Chabot, and just saying, if the minutes are there, if the pace is there, there could certainly be fireworks going both ways. But if you're looking at the Ottawa top 6, do you have a preference as far as which side you would attack?
I think Cutter Gauthier just scored, by the way, before we.
I mean, I told you,
I'm
he's
pretty
the
sure.
absolute GOAT. He's hot. He's going.
All right, that was the notification I got. I haven't seen it confirmed yet. I'm not watching it, which is sad. But getting to Ottawa, I guess I agree with what you're saying. Going through some of the games, it doesn't seem like they've hard matched very much, which is kind of like you're saying, like, well, who was the hard matcher? Like, who was the guy, right? Like, they don't really have a guy that you're like, oh, obviously this guy's going to be the guy they use. And in those situations, if anyone, it's maybe Claude Giroux because he kills the most penalties. But even if you work off that assumption, I think that only, could give you a little bit more of an onus to play a guy like Brady Tkachuk. I just don't think I'm going to this game. Like I said, I don't really see where the right mix comes together, because I'm not playing Ottawa 2 here. That, again, just doesn't really entice me all that much. I get why you would, but Stützle just doesn't feel like enough of a game breaker to me, that I'm playing him with guys that I just don't think are also enough of game breakers to me. And like, it's a good line and it's not that expensive, but like, I feel like it's fancy play syndrome, and Brady's just a bit too expensive in this matchup for me, even though Norris is a good savings. I don't believe in Ridley Gregg. I don't think I'm going here. I don't think you're wrong to go to Ottawa, playing Edmonton on a back-to-back, low ownership. It's Brady for me. He's the only guy I think that has that upside that could like truly, break the slate, because we've seen when he gets shooting, it can not stop. And, the 35s are there when he only has a goal and an assist. So it's through Brady, but I'm probably not going to have it.
Yeah, Stützle is trending a little bit up. 6,300 isn't great, but if you're a believer in the talent, he's certainly a guy who we would expect to outproduce his expecteds, and he's done that over the past 10. And I want to say his expecteds were in like the 6s before this weekend. We were looking at this last week, and we were like, oh, Stützle. So, whatever that means to you, he seems like he's been doing a little bit more, just in terms of generating offense for himself. Drake Batherson is still wildly cheap for the sort of player that we know he can be, just a dynamic shooter on the power play. I'm not chasing Jake Sanderson by any means, but if you wanted to say Stützle, Batherson, Chabot, again, I'm not sure how the 5-on-5 D plus forwards are really going to look here. It's a very, I think, McDavid specific matchup that, like, I don't know if we have any clear precedence on like what they would do against, Toronto or whatever. I just don't think it's the same thing. But if you just want to say, oh, well, Chabot's going to be on the ice a ton, he's been unbelievable, and his price just hasn't moved. So 5,300 for Thomas Chabot, I think is a great play, either just stacked with whatever top 6 line you choose, or just as a one-off play to get some value. But yeah, I like Ottawa, and I think I would side with the second line. Buy me some Drake Batherson and get a maybe ascendant Tim Stützle before the field catches on to maybe he's actually going to do stuff now. So let's move on from that game to Tampa at Pittsburgh if you are ready.
Yeah, this is going to be the other chalkier spot, like I already alluded to. I do think this is where, I don't think right now this is the highest total, which would mean that I think Tampa is right up there with the highest implied totals, as there's no big favorite on this slate. Like, this is not even the biggest favorite. No, this is the biggest. No, second biggest favorite. My bad. I thought that was right. Now I confirmed it. Minus 148 for Tampa on the road. A competitive game via the sports books, which most people would disagree on, but it kind of does feel like if you just kind of step back from all the media stuff around the Penguins and really like think it through, it's probably, not as bad as they're not as bad as you think, I would say. And I think that they're bad, but they're not quite, abysmal. That being said, I still really like Tampa in this matchup. Braden Point will be back. The whole line is back together. Point is 6,500, which feels, I don't want to say cheap, but fair at the very least, especially for a guy that's, perennially a 40 goal scorer. So I'm still interested here. Like, while I respect Pittsburgh more than most, I do think this is a very good spot for an ultra correlated stack to come together. How do you play it exactly? But it gets tricky, but I do think this is like a good spot on a slate where I don't think it's going to get overlooked at all. That the concern is ownership for me rather than like good play.
Yeah, Braden Point is cheap enough to the point where I'm pretty concerned about ownership. This is a guy who's usually in the upper sevens. I think it might be to the point where Braden Point's going to project well as a one-off. I would strongly encourage you to not do that and just jam in Nikita Kucherov with it. There's a guy, I can't think of who it is right now, who I've noticed on several slates in the past few weeks has played, obviously without Point, but he's played Sorelli, Hagel, Gensel, Hedman, and just not played Kucherov with it while still like overstacking Tampa. And I'm guessing the reason I'm noticing it is because it's somehow near the top of the leaderboards. But it's not like Kucherov has been bad by any stretch. So like maybe there's something there that I'm just not seeing and, not just allowing myself to sort of step outside the realms of, the salary matters, 9,400 matters for Kucherov. But I just don't see a way to truly put away this slate for Braden Point without Nikita Kucherov having a monster game as well. Like you say, I'm pretty bearish on, I'm bullish on Pittsburgh as a team. They've just simply not been as bad as the results have indicated. So the field is, I'm pretty sure, just heeing and hawing at the opportunity to jam in a newly reconfigured Tampa one that's a little bit cheaper than usual at 23K against this Pittsburgh team on the road. I think I'm fading. There's not even the Victor Hedman value anymore. He's up at 7K. Like I just don't see it. One guy that I can see, if I played an overstack with, say, Victor Hedman, I think Connor Geeky is a guy I would throw into that. Like, he looks really good. His minutes are ascending. His role seems to be ascending. And my God, he gets the puck. He is a one-track mind to just bulldoze in front of the net. He's a lot of fun to watch, and I think is way too cheap at 2,600.
Yeah, everything you're saying I agree with, and I do feel like it's just one of those spots where if you play one-off Braden Point, I think you've done it wrong. If it works, it obviously could. Like, there's obviously a scenario where it works, but I do think you've done it wrong because, it's just even at 6,500. Again, I think that's Opto Bro stuff that just shouldn't actually be the case. Like, Kucherov is the engine that drives this bus. If he has 3 points, the slate's probably going to bed, and you're going to be just sitting there with I think Point is going to be a bit more owned than the rest. And yeah, no, don't do that. But ownership's going to funnel here. There's a couple other spots that I really like. So I think at the end of the day, I'm just not going to end up being on it, even though I think it's a great play. And like, it could be a great play and it could be a bad DFS play. And if you're, betting, I think that you could absolutely stack this up for points and you could feel fine about it. Like it's a good, that they're back together, and like keep an eye on what these prices are. But like in DFS, I think you're probably talking yourself into a bit too much ownership for the results, which have not been great. And if Point comes back and gets him there, that just is the way that Slate will go. But we can move over to Pittsburgh. We're both kind of alluding to the fact that we think they're maybe better than meets the eye. They absolutely bullied the San Jose Sharks. The expected goals were just, double the Sharks, and they almost lose it. They win it in a shootout. Absolutely had to have it type of game. It's not going to get any ownership. Tampa's, I don't know. I don't know what I'd say about Tampa. I feel like they're boring enough to where I'm just not going to play the Penguins because I don't really see how I'm playing them at these prices, but they're not great. Like they're not fantastic. Does Braden Point fix them? I don't it's like, no, but I think it kind of makes the team a little bit more whole to allow Cirelli to not be with Kucherov and have to like change his identity a bit to fit the situation they've kind of put themselves in. So like, I think it's like, I don't think I'm going to go here. It's not quite fancy play syndrome as much as I think it's like, are you kind of cutting yourself at the knees just to get something that feels a little bit better than I think it is. Like it feels like a bit of a mirage that the Penguins are like in a good spot by the numbers.
Yeah, Tampa's certainly a team I have a lot of respect for at both ends. So I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, well, Pittsburgh's." I'm not playing Tampa because I think Pittsburgh's going to roll them. So I think I'm generally looking at this as a stay away. If Chris Letang is able to return, I think that might swing the needle for me a little bit, just because Chris Letang is still decent, even as an older guy. He might be not as good as he was, but certainly better than Jack St. Ivany in the top four. So that's the one thing I'm looking out for. He's missed the last 2 games due to illness and has not practiced yet, so it seems like he's not going to be available to them. But if he is, then I might reconsider the second line in particular, 16.3K for Bunting, Malkin, Rust. This is a line that clearly works together. Gino's been, quite good. We've pointed him out. He sort of spiked early, dipped, and then when Rust came back, it seems like he's ascending again. So, like, again, I think this line works. I think there's a clear reason for it. And yeah, Michael Bunting, won't knock your socks off, but he's 3,200 as the sort of third wheel on this line. I think that makes a lot of sense. But again, if Chris Letang's out, I just think there's enough spots on the slate that I'm quite interested in to really need to find like a mid-tier stack like Pittsburgh 2 for 16K. Anything else to say here before we head over to Minnesota St. Louis?
We can head over to Minnesota St. Louis.
All right.
We are.
What's up, Tim? Thanks for hanging out with us.
Oh.
Tim Parlapiano,
yeah.
a shout out to you for hanging out in the chat.
It's Parlor Piano, I believe. It's an old cowboy term. Anyways, Minnesota should be welcoming back Joel Eriksson Ek, as you've already shown. He is slotted in right now, and I would do that. Was in they practice, right? Am I losing my mind?
Yes,
you put this together, but yeah, and it was Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek. I'm like almost positive I saw that as well. This is kind of another situation where, like, on one hand, it feels like Eriksson Ek is too cheap. He wasn't really doing much before he got hurt, to be honest. Like, there were some spurts of greatness surrounded by some bad games. He had slowly dipped from 7,700 down to the 6,200 mark before being injured. He comes back, still at 6,200. At the end of the day, anyone playing with Kaprizov gets a massive boost, and the fact that his price doesn't reflect that, I think is very interesting. So this is my preferred stack over Tampa, which is why you can't obviously play both. That would be already, I think, just a 0% chance that that's going to fit. So I think I'm going Minnesota 1 over Tampa 1, which is kind of one of the decisions you're going to have to make. Of course, there's also Edmonton, so they're going to get ownership. They always do. So that's kind of why this slate feels not great, but you kind of break it down and you're like, there's a lot of fun decisions to make here. This feels a little bit more game theory and enjoyable because there's 3 spots kind of right off the hop that are all great. The Blues aren't good. They're not terrible. I am not afraid to stack against them at all. It does feel like this is a team that's just on the verge of giving up a touchdown at any point. So I'm planning on playing Minnesota 1 fully correlated. I could actually see a scenario where I just throw Ryan Hartman in and just say at 3,800, like he's power play 1. Who really cares? Are you considering playing Chisholm? I mean, he's been a guy that's shown decent rates. The minutes have never followed along for the ride, but he's slotted into the top power play right now. He's minimum salary. He's gotten minutes in the past few games. So like, is this just an obvious jam at that point because like, he doesn't have to do much?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right. It's not like it's certainly he's not a guy who I'm rushing to play in non-Minnesota lineups. He doesn't really have like a shooter's profile to him, but he does have a decent profile of putting up points dating back to his time in Winnipeg when he would get, secondary power play run. Like he's a perfectly capable power play facilitator, and he's going to be more involved than Brock Faber is from a distribution standpoint, from even a shot taking standpoint. Like that's just not who Brock Faber is. So when you get a pretty considerable discount on that, um, 20 again, dead minimum. I think that makes a lot of sense to mix in with your Minnesota ones. The only sort of concerning part about Minnesota is that they weren't a boring team all season long. Their start of the season was pretty strong from an expected goal standpoint offensively, and it's just cratered as the season has progressed. Now, this last stretch is probably due to the fact that they had no Eric Zanek, and it hasn't stopped Kaprizov. I mean, Kaprizov's been awesome all year long, and so we're not really worried about what happens when Kaprizov leaves the ice. But that's like the one word of warning that Tampa actually looks pretty decent as a team and Minnesota does not. But again, betting on Kirill Kaprizov being a singular talent makes a ton of sense. I would be fine playing Kaprizov, Boldy, and Chisholm, leaving off Eric Zanek, return from injury. I don't think there's too many worlds in which he's the guy you had to have from that line. Now he could put up a stack or a score that you'd be happy to have with Kaprizov and Boldy, but like I don't think he's outscoring those guys often enough to make it so that you couldn't say, find a punt center, say even go Freddie Gaudreau, who's been very productive, and just sort of hoping that maybe he falls into some production to just sort of bet on. Minnesota puts up 6, Eric Sinek maybe gets 20, and maybe Gaudreau gets 15, and that's good enough to get Kaprizov and Boldy, putting up 30 bombs or something. Like there's totally scenarios where you can just overstack Minnesota. You can stack down the lineup, I think, just given the way some of their players are looking. And anytime you stack a defenseman with your team, you can say I have a lot of coverage across different 5-on-5 lines too. That's something that I tend to deploy more often with defensemen than without, is sort of that across line stacking, just saying, I can get a piece of 5 different goals. I don't need to have the perfect guys on every goal if I just have something. So I think that makes a lot of sense in this game as well. But certainly focusing on the top line around Kirill Kaprizov is going to be the obvious way to approach this Minnesota side. Anything else you want to say here?
Yeah. Two things. Number one, since I don't see any Minnesota Wild normals in the chat, are you playing Brock Faber 4,200 power play too, or are you like the Minnesota Wild going to fade him and throw him to the side?
Yeah, no, I'm going to take my 27 minutes of 1.3 fantasy points and just sort of move on with my day. By the way, Ryan Hartman, top power play. I think you said that, but that's
Yeah,
something that's happening with Johansson and Rossi on the second line. Not interested in either of those two, honestly, but Hartman's also a fine way to throw in with, the Kaprizov Boldy stuff. It's a wing spot, so it's a bit tougher, but yeah, not a bad way to go either for just 3,800 on Ryan Hartman, who we also know is a bit of a donkey chucker when he gets his hands on the puck. He's replacing Matt Zuccarello, who seems like he's out long term. So there's certainly a role there to fill, and whether it's him filling it, who knows? But yeah, I kind of like that angle as well. All right, St. Louis side.
All right, the Blue is a team that I don't know. I don't know how I feel about them. I don't like the spot. I don't like them very much on paper, but I do like a fully correlated line one that's like, almost 14K. that has Jordan Kyrou, who is a guy I do believe in. Like it's just one of those tricky things where it's like, you just kind of abandon the fact that this is a bad spot for this cheap. I mean, this is the lowest total on the slate, 5.5. Second lowest total on the slate, but pretty much tied. Minnesota minus 170. Wait, so they're the biggest favorite. Is that what I said?
I don't know.
Okay, you know what? I've screwed up everything. Because they're minus 170. Tampa's not the second biggest favorite on the slate. They're the third biggest favorite on the slate, but who cares? St. Louis is in a spot where their total is projected to be incredibly low. So, with that being said, are you considering them at this price?
I guess to say no is sort of oversimplifying it because, I mean, Minnesota's really good defensively. They get Joel Eriksson back. But if I'm betting on, Kaprizov, Boldy, Eriksson for 23K, like, 6-0 is possible, but it would be a lot easier to see this game being, 4-3 and them having to actually roll, that first line throughout the entire third period and sort of generating efficiency that way. And when you look at these prices up and down the lineup, there's absolutely nothing that should really scare you off. Now, it's not great. There's no one here who's like, oh yeah, that's a clear and obvious value. But a guy like Dylan Holloway stands out. He's been shooting a bunch. He had 7 shots against Carolina, which that's hard to do. So kudos to him for figuring that out and how to get volume against Carolina. Jordan Kyrou, I think, is actually cursed. I want to say he's hit like 3 or 4 posts in his last handful of games, with I don't think anything to show for it. So he's obviously the driver of the bus offensively, but he has no goals in his last his last 5 games. Pretty sure he has a few posts strewn in there from watching the games. So if that shifts just a little bit, you're looking at an easy 30 bomb possibility for a bonus and 2 goals for Kyrou there. So there's a lot to like here, I think, in terms of like one-offs and maybe even stacks with the Buchnevich and Neighbors prices falling, but not a ton that you can take to the bank and say, yep, I'm playing them and not making it sort of like a game stack, which is, I think, what I want my mentality to be in looking at St. Louis.
Yeah, I don't mind St. Louis too at all. I think that Shen, Holloway, Saad is totally an option here, but will they be matched up with the Eriksson line? I don't even know if it's really going to be. I don't know. Does it matter?
I don't think we've seen St. Louis at home in quite a while.
I'm kind of thinking that because you would. I don't even know. I don't know if it really matters. It's probably not anything that you're going to lose.
They played Boston with a very similar alignment to what they have right now, and it was pretty spread out. As far as who played against Pastrnak, for example. It looks like Buchnevich took that matchup very slightly, but all 4 lines saw some time against Pasta, and it certainly wasn't a hard match type effort on their part. But who knows? I guess I'm not that worried about it personally, because if the matchup is tougher, there's going to be more minutes because of just how much they should expect to play. So, it's a little bit of push and pull there as far as whether I care about that. All right.
Okay. On to, the Paul Maurice Bowl round 2. Just saw it. We get to see it again, this time in Winnipeg. The Panthers fans were raining down chants of overrated as they skated off with the win in game 1 of the 2-game series. Now, back in Winnipeg, from the, place that no one ever wants to be in Florida, up to Winnipeg, where I think they say where life was worth living and there's beaches and sand. We go. So, Florida. I put Barkov on the cover. He's standing right here behind me if you're watching on screen. And if you're not, he's right behind me right now. I feel like Florida is this team that I just keep looking every time and I go, there's just no way Matt the Truck's going to suck forever. And I look at what he's done and I go, oh, nothing. And he looks bad and he's doing nothing. That's got to change, right? And then it doesn't. And then Barkov and Reinhardt get 2 points apiece and go home, and they don't quite break the slate, but they make the slate feel uncomfortable for a minute. And then, they get passed by other teams. So I don't know. At some point, I really do want to play the truck for Hagee. and I want to believe it's going to work, but it's probably unnecessary on the road in Winnipeg. What do you think?
Yeah, this team entirely revolves around Barkov Reinhardt. It's pretty clear. Kachuk is a very good player, but I I'm certainly not betting on him to be the focal point of the offense at this point in time. Even on the power play, like it's very much if there's going to be a guy who's stealing shots away from like what they want to do, which is getting Reinhardt great chances in the slot there, it's going to be Verhage sort of like stealing the shots and just sort of getting that volume put up. So I don't really see any reason Matthew Tkachuk is like a good option here. Could he hit? Sure. I just don't think he's all that likely to. So yeah, I would much prefer Barkov Reinhardt. Just go with what we're seeing, which is those two guys being absolutely electric and being the focal point of this team. Evan Rodriguez is again very cheap. We're just sort of riding the roller coaster up and down on his pricing. He went down to the third line. He's back up on the top line. So 3,200 for that makes a ton of sense if you are going with Barkov Reinhardt duo. And Juvis Balinskis continues to be fine. He's shooting a decent bit more than I think any of us would have expected as of late. In his last 5 games, he has games of 4-0, 4-4, and 2 shots on goal. The point production hasn't really come along with that, but again, he's still manning this top power play until further notice. And yeah, they just beat this Winnipeg team 5-0. So I'm not expecting that to change here. So I would be very fine playing, Balinskis in a very similar fashion to say a Declan Chisholm. If ownership looks like it's going to be overwhelmingly on one or the other, then I would reconsider. Oh, well, maybe you can just, play the other one because they're not going to be huge pieces of their offense. But they're certainly going to be in position to do enough to be relevant from a fantasy perspective. One minor note, Jesper Vokvist sounds like he will play. With Sam Bennett returning, Vokvist was centering that second line. I'm not expecting the top 6 to look different come warm-ups or anything, but if Vokvist does wind up playing, just be mindful. My guess is he slots into where Sam Miskevich is on the third line with Listerine and Lindell. But yeah, just a little bit of uncertainty because they won 5-0 with Boakfist centering Kachuk for Hagee. I don't think they would keep that. Like, I don't think he's quite that superstitious. Paul Maurice isn't. But it's at least a possibility if he manages to draw back in, which of course would be somewhat interesting given he's much cheaper than Sam Bennett is and would get, ostensibly the same 5-on-5 role that he had last game, which was good enough for 16 minutes. Not bad for the minimum.
That all makes sense to me. I don't think I'm playing Florida. I definitely understand it. We move over to the reasons, I guess, why not. I still respect this Winnipeg team. I'm not going to let one game completely dictate sort of that entirely. I do think that they're a bit susceptible defensively, but again, it's just like at some point, I'm just not spending. I much prefer Minnesota than Florida, and I much prefer Minnesota than Winnipeg. So I'm probably not playing this game at all. I definitely could see a scenario where Kyle Connor is a sneakier play, but just again, Florida's really freaking good. He hasn't come down in price enough to where I think it's warranted. He's a fine, very cheap play with line mates that are cheap enough to make it feel cohesive and work, but they really tried their best to let that line play against Barkov, and that Barkov ate their lunch, and I just don't really think they're going to come back and completely dominate. So it's just sort of the situation where I'm like, I'd probably just sit this one out. Winnipeg's in a bad spot. No big deal. I'm like, I think that we're good enough to slow Florida down enough to not break the slate. So again, it's just, this game just doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much exactly where I'm at. There's enough spots on the slate that are either mid-tier or expensive that like I just prefer. So if I were to play Kyle Connor, I would definitely try to fit in either Mike Scheifele or Gabe Vilardi with it. But yeah, I can't really say anything on top of what you already did. So let's move over to a donkey fiesta of Anaheim at Chicago. Anaheim currently leading. Let's make sure that hasn't changed in the 3 minutes. Currently leading 3-0. against Dallas heading into the third period. So yeah, not exactly what we had expected from Anaheim in this spot. They're heading up to Chicago to play a back-to-back situation. Slightly tweaked lines, worth following if Cutter Gautier's goal eruption. Like you said, he scored this game, he scored last game. So, back-to-back goals. Whether that gets him into the top 6, probably not, but it's at least a possibility. Yeah, let's start on Anaheim before we get to the crown jewel of the Donkey Fiesta Bowl, which is Chicago. What are your thoughts on Anaheim here? Can we ride the wave of Cutter Gauthier?
Yeah, all they had to do was put him on the fourth line. That fourth line scored at 5-on-5. Cutter Gauthier scores on the power play. Owen Zellweger 4K is going to score every time he shoots the puck on the first shift of the game. It's pretty easy actually when you don't think about it. Now you might be thinking, DJ, you keep talking about like these big favorites and these stupid things and blah blah blah. Well, what if I were to tell you that Chicago is almost as big of a favorite as Minnesota at minus 162 at home, a price that I just did not expect considering they're a disaster right now, it feels like, and their best defenseman is out, and their best defenseman isn't even that good. Although I guess maybe you could argue Alex Martinez is better defensively. Who cares? The point being is that
I wouldn't. I think Seth Jones is pretty good, but I think he matters.
Yeah, Seth Jones is good.
But I don't know.
I did a whole video where I talked about how I thought he was pretty good. But regardless, just like, boy, the sportsbooks don't believe in this team. The optos might not be believing in this team. I don't really believe in this team defensively at all. Like, I think that defensively, they're pretty bad. I just think at the end of the day, you could convince me that the winning lineup is Bedard plus 3 Ducks, and then like you stack some Minnesota stuff, and like that's the winner. And like that's kind of like where my head goes on this slate to build around. So I do think I'm gonna have pieces in this game. The Ducks are horrendous defensively. I don't want to get it twisted. That like I'm not saying that like, oh, at the end of the day, like you have to stack Anaheim and you have to bet Anaheim to win. And like they might win. I don't think this is a great, I think this is a little bit off and it probably will move a little bit, but like just because Anaheim's going to win, on Monday night, but like, man, I think this game has a lot of very, very good pieces and like actually could be pretty exciting. So where are you going if you're going with the Quack Attack?
I mean, Olin Zellweger is certainly where it starts. There's just, I've gotten his multi-point effort on Friday, won me some money. I have him in DFS on Monday. I don't think it's going to win me any money because the rest of the team, it's not looking great at the moment, but like, yeah, 4K is far too cheap for this guy. He's putting up like 7 shot attempts per game. He's very involved offensively, super skilled offensively. He has the sort of junior track record offensive defenseman profile that you would want to see from someone doing this sort of offense. And 4,000 is just a slap in the face, like realistically. So he's, gold star lock, if you will. One-off, stack him, whatever. I think I prefer him just as a one-off. I really would not hate the idea of Brett Leeson and Cutter Gauthier as just like a donkey stack. I was wondering who the power play guy would be alongside of Strome, Killorn, Gauthier, Minchikov, and it looks like Brett Leeson was because he had the assist on a Cutter's power play goal. And again, I think if Cutter's rolling, like I think Cronin is going to play him more than 8 minutes or whatever. And it certainly seems like he's rolling right now. And you cannot dispute that the offense is not coming off of his stick. It just wasn't going from his stick to the back of the net. And now it has. And so I think that's going to actually be a story here for the next week or so. Just seeing, how far this can go. Brett Leeson isn't a guy who we know is like a decent player. He had a run last year of pretty decent offensive production. And even in Washington, he was just fine as well, with a little bit of prospects like track record as well. So he's going to shoot. He's the minimum. He's going to be out there in defensive minutes. Even if he's not getting points on the Cutter goals, he certainly could be involved in like an empty netter or something. So yeah, I would call this the third line. Ross Johnson certainly holding down the fourth line. But yeah, maybe some really cheap Anaheim stuff to fit in like Edmonton or whatever could be in order here. I get the top 6. I just don't like it. Vetrano 5,200. It's been really good. Troy Terry 4,900. The price just hasn't moved. That's maybe their most productive player on the season.
Yep.
But yeah, just not really rushing to jam them into my lineups here at middle salaries.
Yeah, I think it's, Petrano Terry, or you go with the punts. Anyway,
Yeah,
but
the
you do
goalie
it, I
pricing is really
still think
weird.
Zellweger's a play.
Yeah, you mentioned
Yeah,
the money
yeah.
line being the
Right.
reason for this, but like I would not be surprised if Lucas Dostal was 25% owned tomorrow. Which
He's gonna play it. Is he starting? I thought he was starting. He's gonna play it back to back.
No, you're right. It could be John Gibson. I wasn't paying
It'd probably
attention
be
to who's
Gibson,
playing
but
tonight.
yeah.
In,
I mean, they're both 7,200, and Gibson,
yep,
came back and is 2-0. Like, he's played great, so it's not
yeah,
like it's insane to think that
yep.
either or it's whatever, doesn't really matter. I mean, I think Vetrano Terry Strome makes a ton of sense. You could even leave off Strome. He doesn't really do a ton for you, and play Vetrano Terry Zellweger. You could play Dylan Gunther and Zellweger, even though they're not power play correlated. Like, it might be a little bit like what just happened could happen again, but Zellweger does feel like such a value at 4K that it doesn't really matter. You look at this slate over the last 5 games, you're going to find like 7 guys who have shot more pucks at the goalie, 7.2 attempts per game over the last 5 for Zellweger, as he's really, really, really emerged as a prolific rate shooter. That would be tied with Evan Bouchard for that metric. The points have followed as well, with 2 primary assists and 2 goals for 4 points. It's like everything's kind of showing up over the last bit, and his price has just not changed. So totally agree. On the Chicago side,
no, there we go.
If you're ready.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chicago, just a real freaking disaster. I don't know. I look at this lineup and I just shake my head. I do not understand how they haven't put anyone of talent around Bedard to kick off
He
this
played
slate.
everyone with him. It's just been terrible. I don't know.
No one's gonna. I don't think anyone's actually gonna click on Bedard here. Is sort of where I sit, and I think I might.
You are wrong. If they have, I mean, just think about it. If they are actually this big of favorites, and the money line or the total is at least a 6, they're going to have a 3-point something implied team total. How often do the Chicago Blackhawks have a 3-point something implied team total? I just don't think that's accurate. Bedard's going to be monster chalk at 7K. Jason Dickinson's going to carry ownership because he's a good player. He's the minimum salary carrying along Connor Bedard. Like, people are going to see that. He's going to project pretty well. And I don't, I certainly don't blame it. I mean, hell, Jason Dickinson and Joey Anderson might be their 2 best players going at the moment. They don't do anything for offense, which, again, sucks, but Connor Bedard could create that. I should note these power play units are complete guesses. All we have were 5-on-5 lines from practice today, which, as you can see, are a total blender. So just sort of going through them ordinally. Bedard, Dickinson, Joey Anderson, Teravainen, Kurashev, Tyler Bertuzzi, Taylor Hall, Ryan Donato, Ilya Mikheyev, and Pat Maroon, Lucas Reichel, Craig Smith. What you'll notice is that 4th line has remained the same for a few weeks now. They've actually been okay. Craig Smith is a guy who shoots whenever he gets the chance. Lucas Reichel, super talented guy. He's lost his power play job outright the last few games, but again, they've gotten completely owned in all of those games. So or maybe not owned, but they've certainly not produced offensively in all of those games. So I'm projecting he gets back into that power play 1 job. Who knows? I certainly don't. But what I'm thinking is that Maroon, Reichel, Smith might be the only line that is actually all 3 guys on a power play unit. I want to say Pat Maroon also has one of the best chance creation metrics on the team per 60 minutes. If they put the lines in a complete and total utter obliteration of a blender, and they kept that line together, tells me something. Does it tell me I want to play them in DFS? Probably not. But if you're trying to play, McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, and another elite one-off along with it, you could do worse, I think, than Maroon, Reichel, Smith, or some combination of those 2. just sort of betting on like players who are not out there to play defense, like, for whatever they're worth offensively may differ, but like they're not out there to play defense, and the coach likes them enough to want to see some more of them. So yeah, there's my spicy hot take, is that Lucas Reichel, Craig Smith, and Pat Maroon are a stack you should be considering in this 3.3 Donkey Palooza Chicago Anaheim game.
It is a Donkey Palooza. That is absolutely and unequivocally true. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I keep looking at these lines and I keep trying to like figure it out. I can't. Is there any consideration if you're playing Bedard to play either of his current line mates and Jason Dickinson, who, albeit as bad last year, he did have some stretches and like he is getting minutes and he's not completely useless. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Jason Dickinson's going to be 20% owned. Like, maybe the fact that they're both centers dampens that a little bit, but like if Bedard's going to be 25% at 7K with a 3.3 total, which I think he will be, Jason Dickinson's going to carry ownership along with that. And I think it's right. Like, I don't think that's wrong by any stretch. So yeah, I like Jason Dickinson. I would honestly play Joey Anderson with it too if I really wanted to. Like, he's not good, but like again, you don't need much at that price tag to really bet on a Connor Bedard outbreak game. And there's not even a Seth Jones you can play with it to be like, yeah, we know that this guy is going to shoot, on the power play or whatever. So like just taking the guys who are most closely correlated to Bedard, I think makes way more sense than like betting on a Taylor Hall or Ryan Donato and just hoping that the power plays work out in your favor. Like, yeah, I think for Chicago, it's like, stack into what we have or just like avoid it, because yeah, there's not a ton that I like otherwise here.
Yeah. Oh God, I don't know. I agree. I agree. I do. I think that I'm gonna circle and circle and circle, and I'm gonna end up with Dickinson, Bedard, at my centers, and then play Cutter and Zellweger, and then I'm gonna have like a Minnesota stack, and that's like sort of how I see this slate unfolding for me. And I'm either gonna be the donkiest donkey to ever yeehaw, or I'm gonna just be sitting there with a bunch of chalk that fails. But I guess Minnesota might not be ultra chalk. Again, like it just feels like there's so many chalk spots, but Dickinson is going to be just absolutely jammed. You're right, because everything's expensive and he is not. We can move over though to a game that has the actual lowest total. It is a dead pick'em in Calgary, where the Islanders travel to play the Flames. It's just a who's who of who is a boring hockey team. Yeah, the thing is I was king of the Islanders aren't that boring, but without Matt Barzal, they are just nothing. Can't really see a scenario where I could click on them. The prices are coming down, but I still don't think they're quite low enough. Anders Lee has gone up while the others have kind of come down because Anders Lee has actually been very good. But no one on this team over the past 5 has had more than 4.6 shot attempts per game. It's just you're not finding any shot bonuses if no one's shooting the puck even more than 5 times on average. The Flames are good enough defensively. They're not great, but they're not terrible. But I think it's made up for by the fact the Islanders are that bad. I probably end up just fully sitting this one out. Just kind of again, most people will. So I'm sure that if you want to get unique, you can. I think if I'm getting unique, I'm not getting unique with the Islanders though. I think I'm going to the home Flames, who at least there's some players that have a pulse. Unlike what I've seen from the Islanders as of late, and it's not even that they're that bad as like they could win this game. I don't think I don't think it's like crazy to think they win this game and they win it 3-1, and that could happen. Like Sorokin's a great goalie. He might get piled on at the 7,500. That could be the other kind of chalkier goalie, especially if Chicago does get that ownership. Like a lot, but like again, more reason where I think like I just go to the Flames as a bit of my values, because there's a lot of values over there as well. Do you want to talk anyone into playing the Islanders, or are you just following suit?
I certainly would rather play the Islanders than the Flames, but I don't want to play either team, to be honest. The Islanders should be getting back Alexander Romanov. He's not a fantasy guy, but he's certainly an impactful real life defender. And that slides, it slides Grant Hutton out of the lineup. It slides Isaiah George from the first pair to the second pair alongside Pollock. It slides Cholowski down to the third pair. So, like, Romanov is not a huge impact on his face, but like it just makes their lineup that much better defensively, and it might help them actually transition to puck up the ice. Siplikov, Nelson, Palmieri. I wouldn't be surprised if they got some steam because they're 13.8 and they're like one of those when you run like, oh, teams with or lines with this many minutes and like expected goals generation. They're one of the better 5-on-5 stacks like in the league at that respect. And so for 13.8 against the Calgary Flames, I could certainly see that getting some chatter, some buzz, and taking it from like a 3% stack up to like an 8-9% stack. I don't see the same sort of buzz around Anders Lee, Horvat, Pajot, though they'll probably just project better and like actually get into lineups. So I'm I'm a little torn because I've been stacking against Calgary all year and not getting paid off for it. And now when it feels like people are potentially going to be stacking against Calgary, I want no part in it. And so I'm sure they'll just lap the field with me. But Slipikov is fun. There's so many guys to punt with. That's not a big deal if you don't, but I think he's an okay one-off as well if you don't want to play Nelson Palmieri. He's just like a player who he's trying things, and you can't say that about many of these New York Islanders. So getting over to the Calgary side of the house, Matt Coronado's the only guy that I'm like, oh yeah, like that guy. He's a dude. I love him alongside Backlund Coleman. Just the safest role is just with those guys because no matter what the game state is, they're going to be getting minutes. And he's also on the top power play with that fully correlated top line. So where are you looking at in Calgary?
I mean, I put Kadra on the cover, and mainly because I had like 0 minutes to get everything together, and it was more of a conversation piece than anything else. I don't really believe in that Pospisil Kuzmenko line. At the end of the day, when I look at this slate and I see the boys are together and Zari and Sharon Govich, I smile and I think to myself, maybe I'll just go that way. I might honestly just one off Igor. I think I'm betting him for shots tomorrow. I think I'm kind of just running to chase what I've put out there into the world about him being a good player and a good everything kind of about him. The role, it's been up and down. Like we've seen 20 minutes, we've seen 19 minutes. Last game we saw, 15. But I do think this is their most prolific offensive player. I at this point, it's Kadri's up fantasy relevant and he shoots the puck, and I understand where you could go that way. I'd prefer them being together, but this does kind of feel like you're putting a couple of guys that aren't really shooters and more move the puck with a guy that I do believe has really, really good finishing ability. But I think I could at least go with Zari if I had to pick. I just think he's a more dynamic player overall, and Huberdeau's time is just completely gone. But I am really liking that line. I don't think I'm going to find the salary cap to get up to Mackenzie Weegar. But if I'm not playing Chicago, which the more I think about it, the more I think maybe I just don't end up doing it and chasing what I think will be pretty chalky, the more I kind of consider going this route. Zari is at center, so it's not like you're getting, all wingers, but you go Zari, Sharon Govich, and Mackenzie Weegar, and I think you're getting very, very unique. And I just don't really believe in this Highlanders team as much as I believe the field might in this spot, as you're kind of alluding to. So yeah, I think I'm interested here. This is a spot that it kind of feels like a DJ Flag Plant play more than like this is obviously a great spot. I don't know. I think there's something to this Sharon Govich guy. What are your thoughts on Igor?
I think he sucks. I have no interest in him.
Well, you're wrong.
Yeah, I think last year was pretty fluky, and Coronado's like actually a guy who I have a lot of time for. So, yeah, I will just.
I agree with Coronado. I do agree with Coronado. I have no problem with that play. Are you stacking him with anyone?
I wouldn't be, no. And if I were, I would be playing Backlund and Coleman, I think, versus power play stacking. Yeah. I don't trust the minutes here. I don't trust anything that Zari Huberdeau Sharangovich is doing to.
Yeah, I don't know how jam that Coronado will really be. It kind of feels like there's a lot of cheap plays. Does he get forgotten about? maybe. And like that, I think of all of the incredibly fringe plays that are, 5 to 700 cheaper. He's legitimately a very good play. Like he's shooting, he has incredible finishing ability. They trust him in offensive situations. He literally one game just started overtime and immediately scored. And it's like, yeah, this guy has it for sure. Like we know he has it. Like, can he continue to put it together? And I think with the line mates he has, it could continue to happen. Like he's a really good play. So I think you could go either direction here, but we can, get to the final game and get everyone out of here before we, what are we at right now? Almost an hour. Yeah. Let's get to the last game.
Almost, maybe the gem of the night. Let's see. Like from the expected goals, not, but from the actual goals, which, with the Vancouver and the Rangers makes sense. This game does look the best 5-on-5 game of the night. So little late night hammer for us. Yeah, I think there's a decent amount to discuss here as well. That's not the right thing. But let's start on the side of the Rangers. Do you have the total and odds for us?
I have everything for you. It's a 6 over under -122. Nearly a pick 'em. The Rangers are incredibly slight favorites, -112. So yeah, Vancouver coming off a loss on Sunday. The Rangers coming off a win on Sunday. This is such an interesting game. I really do think this is, again, like this game is going to get very overlooked. And I don't think a ton of reason for it to get overlooked. I do agree. I think that I think this is where you're going to go. I think Vancouver's in a decent spot. So this is probably the best way to pivot away from chalk is to go with something over. And I think I know where you're going to end up getting to. We'll get over there. But first, I guess the Rangers are in order. If you're playing the Rangers, I think I'm never playing Zibanejad. Like it's 6K. He's just too expensive for me. I don't think he's any good. I just not doing it. Give me Panarin and Crowcheck and Lafreniere, and I'll move on with my night.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think I'll be trying to sell what Vancouver's, or I'll be buying what Vancouver's selling. I am also interested in Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, and I really like Keandre Miller for 3K as a punt defenseman. I mean, he had 3 shots and a 3 blocks last game for that bonus. When he's playing with Adam Fox, he's just more engaged offensively. I was poking around some of like the teammate stuff on Natural Stat Trick, and there's not a ton of sample to it, but his shot rate does go up very slightly when he's on the ice with Adam Fox, as one might suspect, given Adam Fox's prolific playmaking and not necessarily, he's not a Noah Dobson or Evan Bouchard where he's just ripping it himself and creating offense. Like he's passing it, moving with his teammates, and he's far better than Jake Trouba at that respect. So like Keandre Miller's going to block shots, he's going to take shots. I actually like him as a deep punt, but yeah, Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere is where I would go. And Vancouver feels like they're on the precipice of strangeness. Not really sure how else to put it, but that JT Miller was completely benched in the third period against Nashville, and it wasn't due to injury. They asked Tocchet about it, and he was like, well, JT Miller was actively hurting our chances of winning. And okay, that's your opinion. I've been a long time JT Miller sucks guy. Of course, had to sort of eat my words on that over the past year, where he's actually been super impactful. So who knows whether that lights a fire under him? Who knows whether that leads to all these lines being tossed in a blender and just completely destroyed? But it does mean that I think Vancouver's a little bit of a powder keg at the moment, which with the Rangers probably not getting much ownership makes me think let's go for it. Let's see if there's that 5-1 game in the range of outcomes that really gets us toward the top of the leaderboards on a slate that I'm not overly enthused by, despite all the words we've said about random spots on this slate. So do you have any additional thoughts on the Rangers before you give your take on Vancouver?
No. I mean, if you're playing the Rangers and you're not playing Panarin again, it's just not the way I play DFS. Like he is the slate breaker, and everyone else is ancillary, and I just don't really. Yeah, good to go. And the Keandre Miller, that's an interesting guy. He's a punt, and there's plenty of punts on this slate, but he is also one of them.
All right. So for Vancouver, again, these are all guesses because they got completely blundered last game. But DeBrusque, Pedersen, Sherwood was pretty consistent throughout. Garland and Dakota Joshua tend to play together. Joshua returning from testicular cancer, so really cool. Good to see him back. But those two guys do tend to play together. I would not be shocked if JT Miller just centered those guys. Coming off of this game. But if Jonathan Lekermaki, which by the way, the eye is like silent listening to the Vancouver broadcast. So Lekermaki, he's profiled a lot better than what he's shown in his, 3 games in the NHL. So maybe it's 2, but I think 3. He's not been shooting, not really done much. But again, he had, I think, 37 shots in 7 games, which is over 5 per game in the AHL this season. So he's doing it overseas as well, not just in the SHL. So if he's confirmed to be in the top 6 and on the top power play, just another name that I like that as a cheap option on this slate. So I think that's it. I don't have anything else to add here. We're on Thatcher Demko watch, I believe. But I'm not sure if this game's the game where we see his return.
I guess I had heard that, but hadn't still nothing about him being removed from IR or anything like that. But he's getting closer to a return. I guess nothing on Brock Besser. That's just gonna have to be a wait and see. I'm very unfortunate that he got just unnecessarily murdered for no reason, but he did, and we'll hopefully see him back soon. In the meantime, I do think that I could go the Elias Pettersson route. I understand what you're saying about the Rangers, but honestly, could you find a way to fit a game stack here that's not even anything just like a Pettersson?
Yeah, easily.
Quinn
look at JT
Hughes.
Miller's price. Yeah, look at these prices. You could certainly make it work.
Yeah, but with Panarin, sort of my
again,
could you play Panarin? Yeah,
I don't think it's hard. Who are you playing? JT Miller, Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes maybe don't fit, but if you're mixing,
I'm saying if you still play Panarin, Trocheck or something, I don't know.
Again, literally try it. If
it's
you're
doable.
Doing,
it's doable. All right. I'm just trying to think outside of the bun for the first time. Try it. You should try it. Quinn Hughes still shooting a ton. The results have not followed to the same extent. Maybe they were at a different point in time. The shots have not gone insane. He hasn't had a shot bonus in the past bunch, but he's still shooting 8 pucks at the net on average, and hasn't had that multi-point night. But there's a 30 bomb in there, just always waiting to come out. And the last time he did it was at Florida. So why can't he do it at home against the Rangers? No one's to say he couldn't. So I'm interested here in this game. This is definitely probably the actual correct pivot spot. I feel like we mentioned a few pivots that exist in a vacuum, but I think this is the objectively correct pivot is over to either the Rangers or Vancouver or both. But how about we tell about both of our stacks of the night and our guaranteed goals? And I hate Nathan McKinnon.
Our hee-haw stacks of the night. What's up, Ben? Thank you for checking in. Quiet chat today, but that'll happen as we get into the grind of the November winter season. All right. Yes, I understand your bet's lost and you're very sad. So let's get the top stacks. You can go cry in private. Yeah, you picked a guy who sucks at scoring to score, and you're mad about it. Oh no, boo-hoo.
Anyways, my favorite stack is probably still Minnesota 1. Eriksson, Ek, Boldly. I didn't even realize they're both centers. So you know what? I'll just make it. We always do 3: Boldly, Kaprizov, Chisholm. Just make it those 3.
That is weird.
Yeah, I did not notice that before, and I was just, I guess, a little bit of information about why I like stack so much. So Boldly, sorry, no. Let me finish really quick. 1 second. Boldly, 7.6 attempts per game. Kaprizov, 7.4 attempts per game. That's kind of hard to match any other stack that you might find on the night with that kind of just continuous high rate shooting. And I just don't think the Blues are very good defensively. It's kind of again, go into the beginning of the season and think what is going to be the Blues problem? And it's definitely defensively. And I just think that could start to emerge more and more as this team I just don't think is very good. Back to you in the studio now that we've learned 2 centers
Yeah.
for the 2 of the top.
That
Is that what do
that
you think?
makes me like that makes me like Ryan Hartman and Freddie Gaudreau a little bit more, knowing that they're wings and that sort of helps with the overstacking, I think, of
Yeah.
this team. So I like that idea. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the slate. Edmonton getting shut out in their first game without Darnell Nurse. What if Darnell Nurse is the piece that the Edmonton Oilers need to be the cup contender that they've been for the last couple of years? So let's go with Claude Giroux, Tim Stützle, and Drake Batherson. You can take out Giroux for Thomas Chabot. In fact, I think I will for the purposes of this stack. So Stützle, Batherson, Thomas Chabot, continuing to pick on an Edmonton team that's rolling out the likes of Josh Brown, Travis Dermott, and Ty Emberson on their blue line. Yeah, yikes.
Those are players that are not good at hockey. Very, very astute observation on your end. I think I don't know. I feel like there's so many stacks I kind of like. That which one do I actually love? And I think to fit in something, maybe I think at the end of the day, this could end up being a spot where I either overstack Minnesota, like you're alluding to, or end up with like a 3-3-2. That 3 might end up coming with the Gauthier, Leeson, Zellweger spot. I can't imagine there's in a scenario where I'm actually paying Michikov for the power play correlation. Just play Zellweger, like he's infinitely better, and like they probably need some 5-on-5 production. I might take a little bit closer look at what the game looked like on Monday, but I don't respect the Chicago team. I think they're bad defensively, and without Seth Jones, they're much worse defensively. So I don't think a lot of ownership is going to go to Anaheim, and this might be a way to get away from what is going to be chalky or cheap plays. So I can maybe afford Minnesota with like some Vancouver and get this Anaheim stack and feel like I have something going on.
Okay. Yeah, I cannot go there. So let's just go Evan Rodriguez, Alexander Barkov, and Sam Reinhart. I really want to
The
look at
coward
that.
stack, yeah.
Well, yeah, I want to be a full-on alpha and claim the Lucas Reichel ship as my own with Craig Smith and Pat Maroon, but I honestly can't. I can't think of where I'd use that salary. Like, I just don't think I need to use it. Like, I don't really love the spot for Edmonton or Tampa enough, I think, to really want to jam in like the Chicago cheap line like that. If this were a slate where I had 10 tickets to something, maybe I'd mix it in. But like as a one lineup guy, I don't think that's necessary. So let's go Florida. Rodriguez, Barkov, Reinhart. We discussed the phenomenon with Matthew Tkachuk actually being bad. His lowering price, Sam Bennett being back, maybe it steals some ownership there. Winnipeg's going to take a lot of the air out of the ownership balloon anyway. So let's get Evan Rodriguez in there to make that a mid-tier stack cost for elite stack production. And you can even mix in Uvis Belinskis if you want for some mid-salary defenseman action at 2,800 and power play correlation too. But Sam Reinhart rules. Barkov has been very, very good as well. And let's just get the both of them in my top stack of the night. So guaranteed goals time.
Yeah, I guess we have to, don't we? So yeah, what did we do? I'm pretty sure you went 2 for 2 last time. Let me take a peek again.
Yes, because that is when you were Thursday
Yep.
had hockey and
Oh my god!
Draisaitl
And I
like a
went 1 for
donkey.
2. Yeah. Well, I did. You know what? Honestly, every time I bet a goal scorer that's like actually gonna probably score, they don't score. And if I bet freaking Bakaramaki for his first NHL goal, it's just that's gonna hit. But like, okay, yeah, let's pick the goal scorers in the slate that we're working on right now. The ones who are gonna score and not score, because that means that they would not have scored, and that would be sad. Do you have anyone in mind as I just rambled for a couple seconds there?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Jordan Kyrou, 6,200. He is scoring against Minnesota. He's gonna help make this game stack work.
All right, I'll go the opposite direction and go Coronado. I think that's actually very, very astute of an observation. Sometimes you say something and I look into it and I'm like, that's actually smart. And normally I don't, but this time I did. I was like, ooh, Coronado's probably scoring tomorrow, eh? And I even said, hey, even though I'm not in Canada, that's how much I thought it was good.
Wow. That sure is something. Yeah, let's go Ryan Donato, 4,200. Playing with Taylor Hall, Ilya Mikheyev. I think he's been playing well enough to keep the power play one job. If there's a 3-team total on Chicago and Ryan Donato's on a top power play unit, I don't think I could look myself in the mirror if I didn't just absolutely jam the ever living hell out of that. So Ryan Donato, Jordan Kyrou, guaranteed goals for Tuesday slate. How about your final? You have a lot of money to spend here.
I have 78, which is exactly enough for Matt Boldly, but that's my stack. Is that we're just not doing that? Or I take Gensel and say that like it's not point. Gensel's probably fine too. I don't know. Or I go cheaper, but I was actually gonna go Bedard and then you said Donato, and that felt even worse of a decision. If I'm allowed to take Matt Boldly, I think I'll take Matt Boldly. I'll let you make
You're
the call.
allowed to do whatever you want as long as you say his name correctly.
Boldly.
Thank you.
Yeah. So come on down. Ovi scored twice.
He's quite good at the hockey,
tonight.
isn't he?
Tonight could be the night he catches Gretzky. Anaheim is almost going to blow it. Duchesne scored. Go. That's a good slate. Inevitable, really, that Matt Duchesne scores every slate now, forever. That's just how hockey works. Yeah. So, I don't know if there's really anything else to wrap this up with other than follow us for more Tilt Fest. I will be tilting for no reason often, even though most of my bets are going well tonight. McKinnon is just going to make me go lay in bed and think about what I've done. Anything you want to say?
No, I'm at Fake Moods on Twitter. You are at DJ_Mitchell94. Be sure to follow my newsletter if you are not. I posted 2 newsletters last week. This week's looking like a 1. There's only a 2-game slate on Friday. Maybe I'll take the cheap points and do it, but I am planning to write up Wednesday's slate as well. So yeah, that's moods.beehive.com again. And tweeted out some stuff that I posted in the preseason about Ovi. Feels pretty prescient at the moment, given he's on an absolute warpath through the NHL. So yeah, good stuff over there, and highly encourage you to read that if you suffered through 75 minutes of us talking about a 7-game slate. So you're the sort of sicko that it caters to.
I honestly feel like this was a good show, though. Like we talked about, I feel like we raised good questions. I did, and then you and me both didn't really answer them, and we just kind of said to play good plays, which I think that's the best, honestly, the best answer of all. If I could give you any advice, it'd be play good plays and avoid the bad ones. So guaranteed tomorrow, since we both said we weren't going to play Tampa, Tampa's going to go for 17 goals. Check Systemos lineup to see the full stack and the win. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here and move on to Tuesday night, 20K to first? Let's go. Okay.
No, I know he doesn't listen to this, but Chris Meany getting a job with the actual NHL is really cool. He's doing NHL Fantasy and Edge Stats for them. So I'm really interested to see what he does, and if if he adds a little bit of legitimacy to what that operation's cooking up. So we'll be very interested to see how that progresses from here. But Chris Meany's the guy we worked with over at the Mio Media Network for a year there, or maybe 2 years. So that was really cool to see that like someone went from a fantasy site to the NHL, employing him. And it gives hope to us that this fine podcast finds a home with the NHL someday to just tout the greatness of Cutter Gauthier as he ascends toward Alex Ovechkin's goal scorer record.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good sign. I did not know that till now, but huge congrats to Meany. Just a really nice guy. One of the, I don't even like. There's not enough good things to say about Chris Meany other than he is awesome and very kind, and worked with us for a little while on the Mayo Media Network, which was really cool. Yeah, I gotta send him a congratulations. That's awesome. So if he's listening, congratulations. If you're not listening, well, I hope someone lets you know, and I probably will let you know. I'll give you a congratulations because I didn't know that till right now.
Yeah, we have a comment from Stanley Johnson's side chick. Don't even know where that name comes from, but it's great. It was a
I
great
like
show.
it.
Stop being modest. So we will leave it there for you. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Best of luck on Tuesday. From Doug, from DJ, from myself, have a good Tuesday slate, everybody, and we will see you.